to duck out early or you missed something or would like to come back to it, we will have that available. So first off, some introductions. We're gonna have a very small group today, so we're all gonna get to know each other very well. But I'm
I
Stephanie
hope you
Slaughter.
like participating, Carrie and Laura.
I'm Stephanie Slaughter. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the programming librarian with Metronet. Metronet is one of 7 state-funded multi-county, multi-type libraries in Minnesota, and we serve all types of libraries in the metro area. I also want to say that if you are from Minnesota, we recognize that we are not living in normal times right now. And so we don't want to pretend that everything is hunky-dory here and ignore what is happening in our state. But we really appreciate you being here. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ann Walker-Smalley.
I'm Ann Walker-Smalley, and I'm the director of Metronet, and I have experience in lots of different kinds of libraries, but the majority of my career was as a consultant or working in special libraries. And I have worked with all kinds of state agencies as their consultant on long-range planning, and I also spent quite a few years working with the Library of Congress with their National Library Service now for the blind and print disabled. Um, I also had a sabbatical from libraries for about 8 or 9 years and did a whole lot of different other things, career things where I could apply my library skills, but they were not in libraries. And then I was hired in libraries in Minnesota, and I worked at the state library for approximately 15 minutes before I was laid off. And I had just re-entered the library profession at that point, and things were quite different. So the point of that is, I think this kind of series would have been extremely helpful to me as I re-entered the library profession. I think I worked at the state library 11 months before I was laid off, and then now what? So anyway, this would have been very helpful. I get to introduce our consultant, who is Kelsey Baum, who is um, very helpful to Metronet. We had hired her to work on various HR things, and she also worked with us throughout the hiring process for the programming librarian. And that involved rewriting both the job description and also the job ad for this position. And so Kelsey and I worked together for close to a year on that process, and it was very helpful. And through that, it became obvious to me that Kelsey had many skills she could share with the library community when it comes to searching for a job. And also, when we get to the what's coming, you'll see that there's also a possibility to offer something for managers on how to do that job description and job ad. But I'll let Kelsey tell you more about her background.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Anne and I have been a good team for over a year now. It's funny how time flies when you
Lots of
like
time.
the people that you work when you like the people that you're working with. I've been working in HR and talent for over 10 years, and the majority of my experience has been building and scaling teams, but for organizations of all different sizes. So nonprofit, for-profit, global brands, startups, consulting firms, the works. So really, I have, as it says on the screen, I've created HR functions from the ground up. I now, having stepped out of corporate, work as a senior HR consultant, and really love partnering with the smaller and growing businesses and organizations to build sustainable people-focused systems, empower managers to lead with effective tools and coaching, and ensure compliance and reduce risk with confidence. I think it's really important that we talk about us as humans, not just professionals. So here you can see me. Yes, I can do the black blazer professional headshot, but you can also find me traveling, particularly to the Mexican jungle rather than the Colorado forest, petting all of the dogs that I meet, and I really enjoy playing and particularly winning games. So I am excited to have conversations like this because some of the conversations that I have in HR aren't always as fun. And Anne and I really connected over a year ago about talking about how librarians are matchmakers for resources, and I view HR very similarly. So I really believe that what is good for people is good for business or the organization, really helping people get what they need, facilitating conversations, highlighting strengths and roles for them to be able to leverage. And when they do that, they're able to be in a good position to succeed on their terms. So some of those things we're going to be talking about today because that's the whole point is we really want to help our community succeed. So let's get to know each other. Enough about me. If you will please write in the chat your name, your current role, and location, because I know not everyone is in Minnesota and not everyone is currently working in libraries, but maybe something library adjacent or wanting to get into libraries. And then a fun kind of would you rather. What makes you most nervous? Talking about money, resigning from a job, or starting a new one? So let's see what the chat has to
Or if
reveal
we're
of it.
feeling brave, we can come off mute.
Yeah, actually, I like that idea very much, given we have a smaller group to start out this morning. If Carrie and Christina, you'd be willing to come off mute for a minute and introduce yourselves, would love to have that personal touch.
Um, I'm happy to go.
Wonderful, thank you.
Sure. I'm Carrie Jogish. I'm a digital initiatives librarian at Bethel University. I'm fairly new compared to my colleagues. This is my third year working here. And I just like staying current with the volatile I guess, atmosphere we're living in these days. So
Absolutely. So, Carrie, which makes you most nervous? Talking about money, resigning from a job, or starting a new one? Or are you
um,
cool as a cucumber and they all feel just fine?
no, I think starting a new one, I would be anxious.
Yeah, totally fair. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us, Carrie. Welcome.
Thank you.
Christina. Okay, Christina says she's going to stay on mute for now. She's joining from an academic library in Minneapolis, and talking about money makes me the most nervous. Totally understandable, Christina. Thank you for sharing, and hopefully this session will help alleviate some of those nerves because we will talk about how to talk about money in this session. Okay. So today is January 15th of 2026. Hard to believe we are in the new year already. And today's session, as you already know, is Bookending the Interview, Decoding What Comes Next. So these sessions are designed to work like a series of a book. So while each session standalone is hopefully good, there will be recurring themes building off of each other and connections between them. So we did take a break for December, and we're now resuming the sessions in January, the series. Um, Okay. We also designed the series to be a springboard for meaningful and helpful conversation rather than just a lecture. No one wants to listen to me talk just for an hour and a half straight, which is why we asked for introductions and we will ask for engagement throughout. I want everyone to feel very comfortable interrupting me at any time. You can either do that verbally, come off mute, or you can put something in the chat. And then we can see what themes might be. We can use that feedback to incorporate into later sessions in the series, as well as create new programming. Um, and then the slide also shares about what we have coming up immediately the next couple weeks. So in 2 weeks, we will be doing Researching Your Options, Explore Careers for Librarians. We're partnering with Deed and Career One Stop on that. So that will be a good session that I'm looking forward to. On February 12th, a Bookmark for Success, Professional Networking Strategies. And then on the 26th of February, that one that was alluded to earlier today is that for managers, how to create effective job postings. So that's what we have on the docket for our next sessions. Okay, so we've talked about what's coming next, but previously on next chapter, The first session that we opened the series with was titled Cataloging Yourself. So we did this activity, and we'll talk about that in a minute because it is really critical. But we did an activity to think critically and articulate your skills, experience, values, and priorities and personal characteristics. And that's the first step to any job search. And again, we'll review that in a minute because if you haven't done that exercise, it has been really helpful for our group and a foundation for a lot of the things that we talk about. In week 2, we did circulating connections, LinkedIn, and public presence. So that session focused on how to best stand out, combine networking, volunteering, and exploration of opportunities beyond your comfort zone. We really did spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, as well as some of the ins and outs and specifics of LinkedIn and how it works and how to optimize your profile. So if you weren't able to attend, please check that one out. Session 3, we did Right on Track, resumes and cover letters. In this session, we talked through practical tips and even provided templates and performed a live demonstration of resume edits to really help you stand out in the search, which people responded well to. And then session 4, for that portion of the series, on the record interviews, do's and don'ts. So we talked through all things interview, how to prepare, what to ask, what interviewers can't ask you, and really all of the things to help you prepare for the interview process. So again, if you weren't able to attend any of those and any of those sound like they might be helpful for your job search, please feel free to check them out. They are all recorded with slides available on our website. Right, Steph? Great. Okay, so we took a survey after we did our first 4 sessions to find out, are we on the right track? Are we providing helpful programming tips, tricks, things like that? And so these are some of the we got very good feedback. I was anxiously but very happy to receive. And here are some of the quotes of what people said in that survey feedback. So I learned a lot here. For example, I didn't know that you no longer list your address, which I like. This person is talking about resumes. I learned I can be more transparent about gaps in my work history. Absolutely. We really covered that. Someone really they liked the advice for how to present myself on LinkedIn. Again, we deep dived into that in session 2. And then the most helpful things so far, I've watched the first 3 recordings, have been brainstorming my skills, experience, values, and priorities and personal characteristics. So we're getting good marks so far, and we hope that the second set of sessions will continue to meet that mark. I talked about cataloging yourself or activity from the first session. We're reviewing this because we talk about it in every session. We refer to it. And it really is the first step in any job search, which is often can be the hardest, is taking that good look inward. So in order to answer questions authentically and get the right job for you, you need to take a good look at yourself, who you are, what you want, what works for you, what doesn't. That's just as important in knowing what does. And so showing up to interviews and answering questions with answers you think the interviewers want to hear, you might get a job, but not actually want the job that you're getting. So Steph, if you'll go to the next slide, we'll give a preview of what that activity was. So it's important and a value of Anne's and the rest of us as well to give credit where it's due. So this activity that we did is adapted from Molly Tregilis. I say your name a little bit differently every time. And Molly, if you ever see this, I'm so sorry and so grateful for your work. So she is a former corporate lawyer and executive turned facilitator, coach, speaker, on a mission to fix the corporate world. So the activity that we did was on a blank sheet of paper, either paper or digital. We created 4 sections, and each section had a header. One was skills, one was expertise, one was values and priorities, and the other was personal characteristics. And then we had everyone write down 7 or more things in each section that are true for you and articulate your unique value in order to help get you hired for the right job, one that is the right fit for who you are, what you want, what's important to you, and where you want to go. So if you haven't done that yet, we highly recommend that you do that. As you saw in what people are saying, that was one of the big takeaways from people in previous sessions. Okay, money talks. How and when to address the Benjamins in the room. So I think it's important, and Anne and I were talking about this before the session started, but laws have changed. And so particularly in Minnesota, there was a pay transparency law that went into effect a little bit over a year ago, so January 1st of 2025, that requires employees with 30 plus employees to list the salary range and benefits in all job postings, both internal and external, which is a big win. It goes even a couple steps further, but in prohibiting questions about salary history, people can't ask you anymore, what did you make in your last role? And these two big parts of the transparency law are aimed at reducing pay gaps, right? In wage equity, making sure that people are being paid what they should be paid without consideration to what they made previously or any other protected characteristic. So, if a salary range is not listed in the job posting, even though it should be, you should ask about that. I would recommend during the first or second round of interviews. I talk about them in my first interview always because it's an important part. Money is not everything, but it's a significant portion, and we want to make sure that we are in the same ballpark. So I included some language here that people can use that makes it a little bit easier to talk about money. So if you struggle to ask about it, but you know that you need to, you can use this line. Can you please tell me what the budgeted salary is for this role? I want to make sure we are in the same ballpark in order to be mindful of everyone's time invested in the process. Who could be mad at that, right? You're being thoughtful, you're being considerate, and you're also getting the information that both parties need to know. Okay, if you're asked what you're looking for in salary, so you're not the person asking first, but you're asked first, give a range that aligns with both the market rate and to your personal expectations. You can use the line, I'm currently interviewing for XYZ type of roles within the 60 to 70,000 range, reflecting my education and experience. And then follow up with the question, how does that align with what you have budgeted for the role? So if they're going to ask you what you're looking for, you're going to ask them what they're paying. Um, Again, it's good to establish that you're in the same ballpark right away. I referenced talking about market rate as well as your personal expectations, and there are now more tools than ever that you can use to look up what market rate is. So you can use websites like salary.com, payscale.com to do benchmarking, glassdoor.com. You can also now, because of that wage transparency law, you can look at other job postings for similar roles to get a good idea. Some AI tools and putting in the right prompts can provide a wealth of information. And then other options for that is you could also look at salary survey and like salary data, or always talk with recruiters because um, they are in the know. They're having these conversations constantly. So, in case you're wondering, other states, there are 14 currently that have this law that require posting the range in job postings. And those are Colorado, California, Connecticut, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington. Helpful to know. Okay.
Not the goblin, not the Metronet goblin.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't even expect that to happen here, but it happened all the time in Google Mail or any Google document. It's like, seriously, we do not have a goblin, but we do have a job line.
okay. Excellent.
Yeah,
Carrie,
Carrie.
you have a question.
Yes. It's been my experience because I work for private institutions that many of them have been Christian institutions. They don't follow the market rate. They're below the market rate.
Yeah.
Um, so I know that's I have made the mistake during an interview of quoting the market rate, and they're like, "Sorry, we don't pay that much." So it's that I find that a little bit challenging to deal with private institutions that don't pay the market rate.
Absolutely. And that's something that can and frankly will happen. And that's
Mhm.
exactly why you have that conversation openly right away up front,
Sure.
is to know what are you looking for? What am I looking for? What are you offering? Does that work with what even if it's not market rate, does that work with my life and what I want? And is the job itself, there's so many more aspects to a job, as well as total compensation that we're going to take a look at later, beyond just salary, that make it a good job, right? So they might not be at market rate in the salary portion, but they might have other things that make up for it. Otherwise, it might be a job that you're really interested in, really engaged in, and you're okay with where they're at, but knowing right away, and again, setting expectations so that you have the knowledge and the information to make an informed decision is really important, I think, for both sides. But you make a really good point, Carrie, is that that can and does happen. And that's exactly why we talk about it right away.
And I think it's helpful now that the transparency laws have gone into effect so that you have some sense even before you send the first inquiry. Before it would, it was like, does it pay $20,000? Does it pay, $60,000? And where am I on that scale? So that I think has helped in a lot of ways. It also helps us have an easier entree into talking about money because it's always been hard to talk about money, but now we know what it is. And even though the cutoff is 30 people or 30 employees, I think that has had an impact on organizations even that are fewer than that.
Mhm.
And you see more and more jobs. We see this on our job line, that the ranges have been added. And honestly, we won't list a job on the job line that doesn't have a range now. So,
I love that. Knowledge is power, and we want people to be paid appropriately for the hard work and the dedication that they provide to organizations. It's really important. So I'm really happy. Not only was that a best practice, and now it's required. So, but you're totally right, Carrie. That can be
a
a
struggle.
challenge to overcome, or at least a point of consideration for sure. Okay, so interview follow-up. I get asked about this a lot. When should I check in? How do I handle this? What do I ask them? Um, how long do I wait to send a thank you? Did I wait too long to send a thank you? And so here we'll talk about some of that. So always ask at the end of an interview, particularly in the final rounds, what are the next steps and what is the corresponding timeline for filling this position? Again, you want to know uh, what to expect so that you can behave appropriately and check in appropriately, and not rush it, but also not wait too long, because you have invested a lot of time and energy and thought into interviewing for that role, and that should be respected. So it definitely goes both ways. And setting expectations sets both people up to communicate more effectively. So always ask that. So when you're sending a thank you, send it within a few days. I say roughly, it's not a hard and fast number, but within 3-ish business days is totally appropriate. You don't have to send it the minute you get home from the interview. You don't have to immediately send it the day after. But within a couple days, while it's fresh in your mind, you can send an authentic and customized note. Is good timing for that. So customize for any interview or interviewer that stood out, and note details from your conversation. We'll give an example here soon, but uh, those are going to go much further if it is personalized rather than a thank you for your time. I enjoyed meeting you. Period. The end. See you never. Um, they really do go a long way. As someone who's done a lot of interviews, it shows what you're thinking about. It shows what your what's important to you and what you're engaged in. And again, particularly if you've done activity from session one, some of those things you'll be able to better articulate even when you send your while you're interviewing and when you send your follow-up. So people also ask me, particularly in our tech day and age, what's the best way to send a thank you? Should I send it as an email? Should I send a LinkedIn note? Should I send a handwritten note? Should I send a carrier pigeon? What is the best option? Carrier pigeon, telegraph, I have never recommended, but if you want to stand out, that would definitely do it. Um, Physical thank you cards are also a way to really stand out. They can be more impactful because very, very, very few people do that today. But as we were talking in prep, Stephanie shared with me that she wants to send a handwritten note, but she was always worried that it might get lost in the mail or it might take too long to show up, or maybe they've already made a decision and then she sent a thank you card. And so if you are going to send a handwritten note, send it as soon as reasonably possible to make sure that timely delivery. I will say though that they have always made a difference for me when I've received them. Does it get you the job? Not necessarily, but does it really help you stand out and add a really personal touch of thoughtfulness and care and consideration? Absolutely, yes. That said, email and LinkedIn messages are also really good too. Go with what feels right, go with what feels authentic. But do recommend if you're going to send a thank you note that you do it within 3 business days and that you have it customized.
And we also talked that it's not about, you can do both.
Yes,
Addressing Stephanie's concern with the handwritten note, you can also send a similar or maybe even more detailed note either through LinkedIn or email. It's not one or the other.
absolutely. That's a good point, Anne. Thank you for adding that. I've also received the question, is it appropriate to ask how many people are being considered for the role? Yeah, why not? It doesn't hurt any, so ask them. That can also help you understand, am I up against 47 people and am I up against three? And how that weighs into maybe some of your other interviews or your planning or your timing. I think it's personally reasonable or perfectly reasonable to ask, is it appropriate? Like, how many people are being considered for this role? Ask it, no problem. If the interview didn't give a timeline, when do I follow up? I would say within 7 to 10 days. Um, I think that that's a reasonable timeline, gives them enough time to work through the process because things do happen on the back end. People are out sick or they are busy or someone else who's in the interview process has an emergency and has to reschedule. Things happen, life happens, and things don't always surprisingly go to plan or to the expected timeline. So if they didn't give you a timeline, which hopefully you have asked them for one, but if they didn't give you one, you should follow up within 7 to 10 days. That's very reasonable. If an organization, say for example, you've finished your final interview and they tell you that they plan to have a decision by the end of the week, wait an additional maybe 48 hours before following up to ask for an update. So, again, one of these examples, they share that they plan to have an answer to you by Friday. If you haven't heard from them by end of day on Tuesday, follow up first thing Wednesday morning. Like I said, timelines can change because life happens, but this shows that you're patient and understanding of that life happens and also engaged in the established timeline that they set. Does
So
that make sense?
also at some point here, can you say, I'm being considered for roles in other organizations on such and such a timeline, which would, you know, I really want this job, but, I'm being considered elsewhere. How does that fit
Absolutely.
in?
Yeah, I think that that's something that's very relevant for them to know that can also potentially speed up the process or speed up them giving you an answer. Because, for example, if they're like, "Oh shoot, we know we for sure want Anne," or "We know we want to hire the MetroNet Goblin. The MetroNet Goblin is our best
The
candidate,"
best candidate.
and because he, she, they is the best candidate, the Goblin has four other offers. Okay, well then we really need to speed things up so that we can make sure that we give them an offer quickly so that they don't accept anything else. Otherwise, if they're thinking, Metronet Goblin shows up in chats that they shouldn't, we definitely don't want to offer them the role. But Metronet Goblin comes to me and says, I'm in the running for three other roles. Maybe I'll share with Metronet Goblin. It was great to meet you, and we're going to be pursuing other people. So all it does is provide, again, additional information so that people can make informed decisions. But I do recommend if you are in that process, and that is a reality for you, sharing that openly but respectfully that you have a timeline other places, you're in demand, and one way or another, you would like to know where you stand.
This can sometimes really happen in academic library searches, which, um, having been on a couple search committees, seem to drag on for, in my opinion, far too long, where, some of your best candidates may well be snapped up by somebody else. So I think having an understanding of, what is your timeline, here I am interviewing in January. If you're not going to make a decision until April, I kind of need to know that.
For
So
sure.
even if I think I'm the best candidate for your position, so it's
Yeah.
tough.
Well, and that's something, Anne, that we had talked about also in planning is that government positions can take a lot longer than some private ones. So that's something to keep in mind. The 7 to 10 days, again, is even if it is a government position, reasonable to wait that amount of time, but also know that if it's a government role, that it could very well take longer because there are more I's to dot and T's to check. Okay, so talking about interview follow-up, um, have a template always, right? But customize it as we talked about. We hear often that when people are in the thick of a job search, it's exhausting. It takes so much time and energy, and customizing each thing takes so much time and energy. And I hear that. And also customizing helps you stand out. So that's where this comes in is have a template, but customize it. And as I mentioned before, if you can, include an interesting takeaway or note of appreciation for a moment of connection or alignment and instead of sending a generic thank you for your time. Because if you send a super generic thank you for your time, I liked it, and you should hire me, and that's all the thank you note says, it would be better at that point not to send one. So again, have a template to save you time, but customize it. So here's one that's just an example. You can use this. You can use it as a template and then update the things if they're relevant to you. But hi, interviewer name. I walked away from our interview yesterday, energized and excited about the possibility of joining your team. I am confident I can meaningfully contribute to XYZ Library due to my previous hands-on experience in creative programming and community engagement, combined with my formal education and MLIS from Metronet University. Your dedication to and passion for community outreach, raising library awareness, and being a matchmaker for knowledge and resources stood out to me. Thank you for openly sharing your career story and for considering my candidacy. Sincerely, your name. So that I hope everyone can see will go a lot further than thank you for the time. I really want the job because here you're doing multiple of those things. You're talking about how you're excited about the role. So you're re what's the word in English? Reiterating, excuse me, thank you. Reiterating your interest. You're talking about how you know you're able to contribute. You're listing the things that you've done before that make you a good candidate that likely was in the job description. So here, this part about previous hands-on experience in creative programming and community engagement, as well as the formal education. So ideally, those are all things that are required for the job, and you're reiterating, I have those qualifications. And then you're also sharing a moment or a takeaway that's personalized to that interviewer. So your dedication to and passion for community outreach, raising library awareness, and being a matchmaker for knowledge and resources stood out to me. So you were engaged, you were paying attention, you liked what you heard, and then you're saying, thank you for sharing, and thank you for considering me. So a note like that is going to go a lot further, and you can see it's not that long. It's fairly short, but it's hitting all those points. So something like that. But again, if you want to use that as a template or use it as an example and create your own template that hits those different points so that you can speak authentically and in your voice. I hope that that is helpful. Any questions? Anne, ooh, comments. Anne, I saw something.
I think this is also a place where if you think, oh gosh, I really wish I had said
Mm-hmm.
X, Y, and Z in this interview, or, I wasn't clear enough about why my experience really matches with this. Somebody who worked for me was applying for a job, and I was really pushing, hoping that they would get that job. And they came back from the interview and they were just like, oh gosh, why didn't I, whatever. I said, well, let's work on the response to these people to say, okay, she didn't get the job, which was uh, actually a feather in my cap as well as hers because she's a great librarian. But also think it gave her the opportunity to rethink in a calmer setting what I could have said. When you ask me, I think it was like when you asked me to describe myself in 3 words, I have a better 3 words now. And I think using this follow-up is a good way to do that. It doesn't have to be long, but
Yeah, absolutely.
don't miss that opportunity either. And that's where probably email is better because
Mm-hmm.
it's easier for the interview team to share that feedback or that additional information than it would be if it were a handwritten note.
Definitely. He makes some really good points, and I've received follow-ups before that said, I thought about this question that you asked me more since our interview, and there are certain things that I want you to know, or I think that you should know. And so again, that's showing me that they're still thinking about it, they're actively engaged, and that they care enough about it to follow up with a correction or an addition, something like that. Um, okay.
Does anybody else have
So,
experiences to share about their follow-up interviewing? I see Pam O'Hara has joined us.
hey Pam, thanks for joining.
Howdy. I'm mostly listening because I have a couple folks I know that are hoping to go to some interviews. So I wanted to see if I could get them some good advice. And there's lots of great information, and I'm going to have them go back and look at your other ones too.
Excellent.
Great. Oh, I'd love to
Yeah.
hear that.
And I'm more on the hiring end. We just hired a new person at Selco, and it's been fun kind of streamlining our process and making sure we hit all the marks, making sure we include something about making sure the positions aren't necessarily library positions. Like we just hired a network systems guy, but we want to make sure that they're aligned with library principles. So
Values.
it's yeah, yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And even though DEI is a bad word these days, we want to still
Not around here, it's
Not
not.
something
around here. We
good.
we like that. I think
Yes.
your comment about, I think that whole exercise of cataloging yourself as an individual, as a job search, it's not a bad idea to catalog your organization as well.
Right.
So that as a group, we all agree that these are the values for Selco or
Yes.
Selco/Cells, and that, if someone comes in and it's clear that they are not going to align with, our
Yes.
key values, okay, thanks so much. But
Right.
and I mean, we all do this as part of our strategic planning process, but I think sometimes in an organization that's larger than the two people that's Metronet, it's a good idea to have that conversation across the board. In one of
Right.
my many jobs, I also worked at Selco Cells, so
Yes, you did.
I know its size. So
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
it's a good thing. Thanks, Pam.
Yeah. We also recently this fall did a really intense salary study with a
Oh,
professional, and that was really interesting just to see how she goes into more big businesses like electricity co-ops, and so there's It's more
Oh,
big business. So she was kind of surprised at us because we're very small and each of our positions is individual. We don't have, multiples of the same position.
right.
So that was really interesting to look at what the market was for our positions.
For sure. Pam, since you're someone you had said you're more on the hiring end, do you have any advice or preferences on receiving or anything to add to follow up, thank you notes, things like that? What you prefer to see, how you prefer to see it, what's impactful and what resonates with you when people are following up with you or when candidates are following up with you?
Right. Well, as you said, the handwritten card is not done very often anymore. So that stands out if that happens. But honestly, if there's just any follow-up, I appreciate that. And it's usually email these days, which is what the follow-up is. What I've also noticed is like for the network position, I put it on Indeed, and we
Mhm.
got like 500 applicants from
Oh,
India, New York, California, and they didn't realize they had to live in Minnesota. Um, so I decided I was not going to follow up with 500 applicants, but those who we did think might work, um, but then we decided not to, I would send them an email saying, thanks for the application, but we're going with some others. A bunch of them followed up with a thank you for considering me email, and I really appreciated that. So,
Yeah. Well, and that's something it's a lot less common these days.
mhm,
And people are grateful to get any answer, right? Even
right.
if it's a thanks but no thanks. Just feeling reviewed and considered,
Yeah.
again goes a long way in what they think about for your organization. So I love that you're doing that because
Yeah.
knowing that there's a real human on the other end of that, and you're not just sending an application into a black hole, again can go a long way. And
Right.
job searches can be hard, and so
Yeah,
being
they are.
kind and human and respectful um, feels like something little, but actually is really big.
Yep. Yep.
that's where a
On the
template can help too.
What's
You
that?
know, and from a hiring standpoint, that's where the template helps too. Just
For
so,
sure. Oh yeah, I
because there
always have
was
a
a
template.
there was a bit last night on a marketplace or one of the public radio shows about the um, tough job searches that newly minted college graduates are facing. And one of the interviewees said, it's like you never get an answer about anything. And it would be nice if they just told me that they actually saw my,
Right.
which is what you're saying, Pam. So that seems to be a best practice from a hiring
Yeah,
standpoint.
I
And,
think so.
you could get 100 applications for a library position, but certainly for a network position,
Yeah.
they're going to
Yeah.
be untold numbers. So
Right. Yep. Yeah. So just if you can, personalization is really nice. But as I said, as far as after the interview, I just really appreciated it if someone even just said, thank you so much for the interview, in an email. And that was good.
Great.
thanks.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your participation and your input, Pam.
Yeah.
Okay, evaluating an offer. Congratulations, you got the job. That's a really exciting thing to hear, right? Even just thinking about the times when I found out that I got the call, I was the one, I got this job I wanted so much and had thought about, I just like, I can feel the butterflies in my stomach. Because looking for a job and getting a job and losing a job, everything job involved is very emotional. And so that, and also, working in HR, this is one of my favorite parts about it is sharing the good news with someone, is being able to deliver the news that they are the ones who got the job that they've been thinking about and interviewing for, and they're going to be a good fit to the team. So when you get that offer, before you say yes, there are some things that we need to consider, and there's some things that we need to look at to make sure that it is, again, the right fit for your skills, your experience, your values, your priorities, and your personal characteristics, which you already have defined because you did the activity from session one. Is everyone sick of me plugging the activity yet?
I'm not.
Okay, great, because I will. I can't tell you that I'm going to stop doing it. I probably won't. So, okay, so what are we considering when we get a job offer? One of the really important things that people need to consider is the healthcare transition. When you're looking at all of the details, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but do they have a waiting period for healthcare, or is it effective your first day? If they have a waiting period, what is that gap in coverage? Will you need to get COBRA for yourself or your family to cover for a few months? And how does that impact your budget and your ability to take the job? That is a really big reality for a lot of people is if there is a waiting period, do I have enough money to be able to cover that gap, particularly for families because COBRA can be very expensive. So really think about that healthcare transition and again, the waiting period. Another thing that I like people to really consider, because I've seen it more times than I would have liked to, but is this role a role you really want, or are you just desperate to leave your current position? Like I said, I've seen it more times than I would like to have seen, but sometimes they just want to get out of where they are. It's not a good fit for a variety of reasons. And so they interview and they take the first offer that they're given just to get out of there. And usually, what I've seen, because I've seen this multiple times, is that they are then in that job search process within a year or two because they're not super happy with that job that they took just to get out of that job that they didn't like. So, definitely something that you should be considering when you get an offer. Do you really want that job or do you just want to leave the one that you have? Um, okay, so before we accept an offer, we need to ask for everything in writing rather than just verbally. So a written offer should always include a start date. You should also make sure that you're getting a benefit summary with associated costs of those different benefits, like healthcare and waiting periods. You also need to make sure that you are getting an employee handbook before you agree to take the job. Um, Okay, so with this information, you should be able to calculate the full value of the offer or your total compensation because salary, like we talked about, particularly with the example with Carrie, is that salary is just one part of your compensation. It is just as important, and this is why I'm bringing up the handbook, is that it is just as important that you know all of the policies and procedures that will govern your employment with that organization. You want to make sure that they're aligning with your values and priorities. And here, I forgot I put it in here. Hello, activity from session one. Um, and you want to make sure that there isn't anything that you may or may not agree to hidden in there, like a non-compete. I've seen that before where employees don't receive the handbook until day one. They're expected to sign it, and there are things in it. They've already given notice at their other job. They're on day one of the new role. And then they get the handbook that day and they're like, wait, I didn't agree to that. I wouldn't agree to that. Or you're already, flash forward 6 months, there's something in the handbook that you're being held accountable to. And you're like, I wouldn't agree to that. And then they show your signature that you did agree to it because you didn't read the handbook. So I know handbooks, they are not sexy. They're not particularly for librarians. They are not the fun reading that you want to be doing, but they do inform. So please read them thoroughly and ask questions that don't make sense to you or where you want clarification.
Hadn't thought of that. That's a good tip for maybe even having like a short list of what's in our handbook. I've moved ours to digital, so it's a Google site now, which is our handbook. But there are some policies that they need to sign on day one. So that
Mhm.
might be a good thing to include. Thanks.
Yeah, you're
Even
welcome.
if you know what the period there is for how far in advance do I have to request my vacation, if that's a policy, if how much obviously that's part of the total compensation, but how much vacation do I have or sick
And,
leave
and how
or
does that change over the years? Does it
does
increase once I've
does it
been here?
increase? Yeah,
Yeah, we have a short list of all our benefits, and that's in
right.
there, I think. But
And in the handbook, it should say if you leave the position, if you have unused PTO, does it pay out or
mhm,
not?
right.
Because that's not legally required in the state of Minnesota. Some states it is, and some states it's not. And so all of these things, these handbooks I know can be 30, 40, 50 pages long. And you're like, I don't want to read that. And I promise you, you do. You really, really do. So please do read through them because it's going to give you a lot of details that are going to um, help inform you about what the offer is and also what it's like to work at that organization.
It's going to be really important too now in Minnesota with the introduction of um, paid family leave,
Mhm.
because there could be a cost associated to the employee for paying those premiums. Um, and also, how does that work? I
And
saw some, yeah,
leaves and laws are constantly changing. And so for organizations, it's important that they're taking a look at them yearly, ideally, right? To make sure, are you up to date? Or even beyond just laws and regulations, are the things that you have in your handbook, was it written 10 years ago? And the things, the policies and the procedures that you have in there are not the actual practices that you're following today. They're not the things that your organization values. And so that's another thing to take a look at on the handbook when you get one and you're evaluating an offer, because it should say when was the last time it was updated. And ideally, you want to see that within the last 2 to 3 years to make sure that hopefully they're thinking about things critically and it's a reflection of their values and their policies and procedures. So handbook, again, so important. Okay. So
it's
now
interesting.
go ahead.
Yeah, Carrie's student loan forgiveness is now taxed.
Yeah,
So if that's a benefit that your corporation,
considering.
company, organization offers, interesting.
Yeah. Here I put together, we mentioned salary is just a part of it. It's just one component. So here I put together a completely fake, this is no one that I know's compensation. You can definitely see that because I used fairly easy numbers because I'm really good at HR and less good at math. Um, so let's review the breakdown of what this offer is and how much it's actually worth. So if a company comes to you and the salary of your offer is 50,000 annually, you may or may not be good with that number. But let's take a deeper look because we have a benefit summary and we have an employee handbook to understand what is the full value of this offer. So you do get the 50,000 in annual salary. You also get a $1,000 employer contribution to your healthcare every single month. So annually, that adds another $12,000 to what they're paying you are paying for you. Same thing with dental, 25 per month. That's another $300 per year. Vision, 100 per month. That's 120 per year. 401k match, if it's at 3%, which is a pretty standard amount, that's another 1,500 annually that they're paying you or contributing to your compensation. Professional development, whether that is a course, whether that is professional associations, whatever that might be, conferences, right? They're giving you another $1,500 every year to better yourself. They also have fully employer paid disability, short and long-term disability, which costs roughly $100 per month. Again, these are conservative, easy numbers that are fairly realistic, but again, good for math for me. And then life insurance, another thing that's completely covered by the company, that's a benefit for you at $25 per month. That makes the total value of this offer just in monetary things $66,920 annually. So that adds almost $17,000 every year in 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 value and in compensation that you get. And so when you look at that, that's a significant $17,000 every year is significant. That's a significant bump, and can help maybe make that $50,000 annually seem better than so when you're comparing two offers, right? And maybe the other offer is $55,000 annually, and you're like, wow, $5,000 more. That would make a difference in my life. But then you do this breakdown, you look at total compensation, and the medical contribution is much less, or they don't include professional development, and that's important to you. That's one of your values. Um, it really can. can provide additional detail and clarity on what the offer is, and does that align with what you want and what you need out of your role. Pam, I see you went off mute. Do you have a comment about this?
Oh, sorry, I don't.
Okay. I just want to make sure that I'm,
Sorry about.
again, taking them and love the participation. So again, I really recommend breaking down the total comp with the information that you get in the offer, in the benefit summary, and the employee handbook. We also are going to find in the employee handbook things like days off. So to start out with, let's say you get 15 days of PTO, of regular vacation days or personal days, whatever they call it, 5 days of sick days, and then an additional 10 holidays. That makes 30 days of total paid time off annually. So you'll be making the total value of that offer is nearly $67,000 and 30 days of that. So one full month or the equivalent of one full month out of that year, you don't have to work and you're still getting those benefits and that compensation. Other
I
things
usually
that
do one of those total compensation things for each staff every year when we have raises. So it's a nice way to look at it because it shows you how much you do get.
I love that. That's something I recommend to a lot of different organizations and companies is it really helps paint the full picture of what all of the benefits and what the comp is because again, salary is just one component and there are a lot of really sometimes really good and really meaningful things hidden that we don't always take into consideration. So other things that you can find in usually in employee handbooks or by talking to the employer or the benefit summary, there's additional and potential benefits. And these that I put here are monetary. Of course, there's lots of benefits and things to consider when you're looking at a role of like, growth in your career trajectory or really liking your coworkers. Of course, those are things to consider, but they're not monetary. So the things I included here are monetary. So gym memberships, sometimes these come hidden in the health insurance. So you want to take a look at that. Otherwise, they might be listed outright as something that the organization covers. Commuting costs or transportation stipends. This is a common one, and that can also save you a lot of money if you're getting that. Pre-tax benefits, that's a potential as well, like health savings accounts or other things. There can be other benefits that are pre-tax, which saves you money. Discount programs, a lot of different organizations have deals worked out with different companies, and so you can get discounts on different things that you use and you do daily. Learning mental health or other app subscriptions. This is something that is more common now than ever, like a Calm subscription, Headspace, things like that, or to LinkedIn Learning courses, Masterclass. I've seen that quite a bit. So those are additional potential benefits that have monetary value. Free lunch once per week. Every little bit adds up. So, does looking at this, again, fake made up breakdown help inform everyone on how to be evaluating, thinking about, and looking at offers that they may or may not receive, that they may receive? Cool. And everyone now is like, I'm for sure going to look at my employee handbook because it's important. Yeah. Yeah. See what's hiding in there. Um, Good and bad. And you're talking, but you're on
Sorry.
mute.
I can't emphasize how important the employee handbook is from both an employee but a manager standpoint. Our old handbook was an absolute embarrassment of who knows how it was created. And it did have negative repercussions for us. So it's now been professionally revised and updated, but it is very important to do that. I think another thing to ask a potential employer is their participation in the student loan, the public, what are the right words, Stephanie? The public
Public
employer
service
loan,
loan forgiveness.
public service loan forgiveness, because that makes a difference too, Um, so publicly funded organizations can participate in that.
That's a really good point. And the point that well goes along with Carrie's what Carrie mentioned is, now it's taxed, but student loan help or forgiveness, whether provided by the organization or the company, is a big is a big help. Because every little bit helps. Okay. So just thinking, particularly for Minnesotans, right? Just thinking about asking for more or asking for different can make people sweat, right? Who wants to ask someone for more money? You want the more money, but do you want to ask for it? Probably not. Um, but I want to be really clear that negotiating a job offer, it's very common and it's an accepted practice. It's part of the deal. So employers are generally expecting it. And so it's not something that you need to be afraid of. But if you are, let's talk through how we can do that, right? So while salary often comes to mind when you're thinking about negotiation, just like in the total compensation, there are multiple components to an offer that can be negotiated. It's not just salary alone. That is one component. You could negotiate the salary amount. You could, if they don't have the ability to change your salary, you could ask for more PTO or to start off at a new level that's commensurate with your experience. In the industry that you're going into, but maybe not necessarily with the company. You could ask for a signing bonus or a retention bonus. One that I think it works well is asking for an earlier review, having it negotiated in your offer letter, an earlier review with the potential for a raise. If you go into a role really confident, knowing that like I'm going to absolutely kill it here, and I'm willing to start for this amount, but I'm willing to show you my value in a 6 month timeline. I want you to be willing and able to adjust my salary accordingly. So that's something that, particularly because it's not giving money up front, that some employers are more open to. You can negotiate your start date. It's one that works better for you. Do you want to take some time off? Do you have a vacation planned? You can negotiate your schedule. What about the flexibility in there? Because you have some life circumstance, you need to drop your child or your dog off at daycare on your way, and so the 8 to 4 doesn't work. A 9 to 5 would work better. That's something that can be negotiated and doesn't cost the employer any money. So definitely you can consider negotiating your schedule. A hybrid work schedule, that's something that's more popular now. Negotiating how many days you are working remotely versus in office is something that's up for negotiation. And again, something that doesn't cost the employer um, physical dollars. What about professional development funds if it's not defined as part of the package? So that can be conferences. You really want to go to Teen LitCon, which I don't think costs money, but something, right? You want to go to the XYZ you want to go to the Metronet Goblin Conference because it is everyone's favorite event of the
It is.
year. Um, and it costs $1,000 to attend. So you can negotiate that into part of your offer. Specific training, you want to get certified in, I don't know, underwater basket weaving because it relates to your role. Whatever it might be, those are things that you can negotiate, as well as professional memberships that can be related to professional development, but can just be separate as well. Okay. I will note, and then Steph will talk a little bit about government jobs, but just so that people are aware, often healthcare and 401(k) enrollment periods are not something that can be negotiated because those are generally outlined in the plan documents, the official plan documents between the organization and the insurance provider. So those things can't be changed. That said, even if that waiting period or the enrollment period can't be changed, it doesn't mean that you can't ask for something like maybe a signing bonus or an additional amount in your salary to make up for, the COBRA that you're going to have to cover for a couple months before you're able to enroll. So think creatively, but just know that healthcare and 401(k) waiting periods generally those can't be negotiated.
I did once negotiate, though, the healthcare, changing positions where We had a family member that was undergoing treatment, and the new health health plan was going to be, it would be like starting over. And the organization was not heartless, and they said, what can we do? So what they ended up doing was paying the premium until till that episode in our life was over and we could transition to the corporate health plan. Now, that's probably unusual, but it is possible to do it. You have to provide every single piece of paper you actually have on this topic, but it did make a big difference that we didn't have to start over um, in creating the treatment plan and making sure it was covered and all that. It was just a much easier transition.
And
So
there are cases like that, and I love to hear that when organizations are considerate and supportive of people's individual circumstances. I like that. I advocate for that. And so it's not to say that it's never possible, right? Just like it says in the subtitle, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. But going into it knowing that some of those things are less likely to be able to be negotiated because of rules that of external vendor partners rather than the company not wanting to. Steph?
Okay. So government jobs are less flexible for things like starting salary, and become more common for they post a range, right? And it's become more common for them to include in the job description that the anticipated starting salary is and whatever the lowest number on the range is. And so that probably has something to do with union contracts, etc. But if you can get creative with your asks, then you can hopefully make it a better fit or make it work for what you need. You can do something like see if you can negotiate having the first year or two getting the week of Christmas off. If your library has evening hours, you can try to negotiate, well, I can only work Tuesday evenings. Um, One example is the state of Minnesota will adjust your vacation accrual based on experience. So if you have 10 years of experience in this field and you move into a state position and um, they don't start you at zero, you can submit your information and they can start you at 10 years of experience for vacation accrual. So there are ways to negotiate with government jobs. It's a little harder. You have to be a lot more creative, but it's not impossible.
Okay. So, how do I ask? I want to negotiate, but I don't know how. How do I ask for more money? These two examples I put in here are things that are tried and true. I've given to multiple family, friends, colleagues, etc., that have resulted in significant bumps in their salary. And so I put them here for you too. But a lot of people are afraid to ask for more money. They think that asking for more will get their offer rescinded. But of course, I'm not telling you that's not possible. Anything's possible. It is extremely unlikely, again, because negotiating is a common and accepted practice in the job offer in the hiring process. I also really want to call out that if an organization rescinds your offer simply because you're asking what for your worth, what you should be getting paid for a role, that's really not somewhere that you want to work. Um, it's just not. So again, these two templates, tried and true, both are valuable and let's talk through them. So, hi, hiring manager, recruiter name. I'm grateful to receive an offer from XYZ Library for the Youth Services Library lead role, and I look forward to reviewing all of the details you sent over to help inform my decision. Do you have any wiggle room in salary? So, this is a very easy way to ask, like, is that door open at all? Can we explore it, right? While also indicating that your thanks, you're happy to get the offer, you're considering it, and you want to consider it thoughtfully. But they can come back with multiple things here. They can say, no, we have none, right? Like, okay, if that's the case, it's good to know right away that there is no extra room. There is no wiggle room in salary and that you're getting the most that they can possibly offer. They could come back and say, well, what did you have in mind? And that gives you an opportunity to share because I have my master's degree in library and information science from Metronet Goblin University, and I have this and this and this experience. Um, a salary of whatever would be more appropriate for for the work that I've done and the work that I'm going to contribute to your team, as well as market rate. So then that gives you an opportunity to make your case, right? But always you can't say, well, because I have really high student loans and diapers are really expensive now, and my dog wants to eat. Like, right, I get that. But when you're making a case for why you should make more money, it should always be about what you're bringing to the table and about what market value is rather than personal need. So that's a possibility. Another possibility with the do you have any wiggle room in salary is that they might come back and say, yeah, we can up it to this amount. So asking this again, it's kind, it's respectful, you're grateful for the offer, and you're just asking, do you have any room? So it's maintaining that relationship that you've already built and asking in a it's a soft ask, that could lead to multiple things, including more money or clarity for you, knowing that you're going into the role with the most that you could possibly make. I've seen it happen multiple times where people get into jobs and they're like, oh, I really should have, they just accept the job without negotiating. And they think, I wish I would have asked for more. I should have tried to negotiate. And it's really hard to do that. It's not impossible, but it's really hard to do that after you're already in. So at the beginning is a great time to do that. Another scenario that we have for the second template here is when you receive an offer that's lower than what you expected. So, hi, name. I'm grateful to receive your offer and very excited about the idea of joining the team at XYZ Library. As I'm reviewing the full offer in detail, can you please help me understand how the organization determined the starting salary in my offer? The job posting advertised a range of $60,000 to $70,000. My qualifications and experience not only meet but exceed all of the requirements of the role. So here we're asking in a kind way, like, why'd you lowball me? Right? And it's respectful, but it's clear that you are meeting and you're exceeding all of the expectations, all of the requirements of the role. And so you had expected to be at maybe not the very top of that end, but if you do meet and exceed the qualifications for the role, why are you getting an offer for 62? Right? So this is a very respectful way to do that. And they might come back with more money. And they also might come back again with explanation as to because of internal equity reasons, et cetera, it might provide again information about why that is what it is. So both of these templates have worked multiple times, and feel free to use them if they're helpful. I also want to mention that if, for example, you're talking about money in the interviews, right, and you give a range, I'm looking in the $60,000 to $70,000 range, and they come back to you with an offer that's 70,000. While you always can negotiate, I think that if they're already giving you the top of your range and what you asked for, that there probably isn't negotiation room or necessity to be doing that. Questions, comments, concerns, jokes. How do people feel about asking for more money? Has anyone ever done it? Anne?
I have a lot of experience in looking for jobs, is what this boils down to. Yes, I have said, you know, what can you do to increase this base offer? Because I not only meet all the minimum qualifications, I meet all of the desired qualifications. And this is how I do that. You know, you want a grant writer? I'm a grant winning writer, you know, sort of thing. So it wasn't a lot of money, but it brought up the idea that yes, I do. I also negotiated at Selco when I was on a contract with them as a contract employee where it was X amount of dollars per hour. And I said, no, I can't continue in this at this. And they paid my employee contribution to Social Security, to whatever to all those federal taxes, which was, you know, not something I had thought about, but that the director at that time, and that made a difference.
Totally. Christina put in the chat, and I love this. Feeling more confident seeing these templates. Good.
Great.
Ask for more money. Ask for what you're worth. Do your research, of course, know what that should be, what's appropriate in the market, but ask for it.
And we're glad you got in, Christina. That was a struggle there in the beginning.
Okay, so resignation. This is also something that people ask me about and makes people nervous. How do I do it? What's the right way? So we're going to talk about that here in this next slide. So important steps and considerations to prepare you to give a good resignation, to leave on the right foot, and also making sure that you're taking care of yourself in the process. So again, we're going back to that employee handbook. Check your current employee handbook to look for standard guidance or requirements for the resignation process. While it's of course not universally required, a 2-week notice is fairly standard and considerate in the United States currently. I want to point out that 48 of the 50 US states are at will. What that means is that either the employee or the employer can terminate the employment relationship at any time with or without cause, in parentheses, as long as the reason is not illegal. Some employers do require a certain notice period in order to be eligible for unused PTO payout. That is something that I've seen. So you always want to make sure that you know what, again, you want to know your terms and conditions. So read through that. You'll want to consider, do you have a union contract? Make sure you read it, just like the employee handbook. Ask for any pre-planned vacation or days off that you're going to need after you start the new job during the offer stage, because both you want to have the peace of mind knowing that you're going to be able to take that time off, as well as know that it's approved, and as well as the employer will want to know that ahead of time so they can also be planning for that ahead of time. So again, going back to healthcare continuity, one thing that I think is important to mention, and again, I know not everyone who attends these live or after the fact recording is from Minnesota, but something important and interesting to know is that healthcare plans that are based in the state of Minnesota, if that's where the plan is written, is within the state of Minnesota, will cover you for the whole month, even if you have just 1 day of eligibility. So say, for example, your official last day of employment is February 1st. That insurance plan from that former employer will be valid through February 28th or 29th if it's a leap year. So the last day of that month. And so that's something that you really want to keep in mind when you're thinking about healthcare continuity and you're planning your start date. Something that can be really helpful in planning and negotiating your offer. And I always recommend to people, whether starting a job or leaving one, whether I'm helping them get the job or I'm the company that is hiring them or the organization hiring them, take a few days off between roles, right? Take some time to rest, relax, reset, recharge, and go into your new position feeling good. That can be just a couple days. Maybe you just want a long weekend, or it could be an entire week or longer, whatever that is. But having at least one, I think one is too little, but I know that there are different situations and realities for different people. But having at least 1 day off in between gives you a chance to start fresh. And I really recommend taking some time off between roles. Okay, so here is step by step how to resign. Tell your manager first verbally if you can, or virtually if you are in a remote environment. And then make sure that you do follow up in writing. Your resignation should also include your last day of employment. I think it's important to note people are going to be curious, they're going to want to know. And if you feel comfortable and you have the relationship, you can go ahead and share, but you do not need to give a reason for your resignation if you don't want to. Again, these are at will. 48 out of 50 of the US states are at will. So you don't need to give a reason if you don't want to. You also don't need to share where you're going next if you don't want to. There's nothing wrong with doing that, again, if you have, depending on your relationship, but it's not required. Step 3, ask if they have preferences on how and when your departure is communicated with the larger group, as well as share your own preferences. So communicate with them. Like, what do you want this to look like? Who do you want to know at what point? And share what you would like that to look like as well. If you want to be the one to tell your team or your colleagues personally, you want to be the one to share that, tell them that that's what your preference is. But having open and transparent conversation and planning for these transitions can really go a long way in maintaining that relationship and not burning any bridges. So step 4, collaborate with your manager and or coworkers proactively to make a transition for your work plan. This is a really critical step that should be considered. So I get a lot of questions about counteroffer, but Anne made a really good point that they're not very don't expect one in a typical library job search. That are not super common. Consider these things and potentially move on in more private or higher level leadership positions. They can sometimes be more common. One of the things that data continually shows is that people move on. Even if you accept the counteroffer and you stay, that people generally within, again, the next year or two have moved on anyways. So depending on what your circumstances are, maybe it is the right move, and it also might just be a band-aid fix. So that's something to mention. Okay, Steph or Anne, do you want to take this one?
I think that's me, a glimpse into the future with our crystal ball. We have planned out tentatively a series through May and June of this year. Our next session is going to be January 29th and it
It
will
said,
be at the job outlook. Is that the right date? January 29th? At noon. And we
no,
will have,
it's at 2 o'clock.
that's what I thought, 2 o'clock. Okay.
Before it said, I'm thinking when I was editing it, it said 10, and I went to go change it to 2, and apparently I added the 2, but I forgot to take out the 1. So I'm going to change it right now, especially before it goes online, whatever, and it's going to be at 2 p.m.
Okay, thank you. January 29th at 2. And we're collaborating with our experts at DEED, the Department of Economic Employment and Economic Development, the state of Minnesota. We'll have Orion Cassell from the Labor Market Office, and she will be bringing one of her colleagues from Career One Stop, which is an important resource to know. It's a U.S. Department of Labor organization, but it is headquartered in Minnesota. And that individual will talk about the same sort of thing. What is the outlook? And here are resources that One Stop can offer. And it will be moderated by our colleague, Drew Frickberg, who is the librarian at DEED. Then we're going to move on to professional networking strategies, some career transition topics. Is it possible to move from one type of library to another? Those sorts of things. We're looking into the academic hiring process as a session. We do have a plan for employment law. And here's our big event, and we want you to make note of this, even if you live in Rochester or its environs, that we will have an in-person networking event at some point in May. It will be in St. Paul, and it will involve food. And we encourage people to attend because through all of this and talking about our professional networking strategies and in seeing all the feedback we've had both pre, currently, and post some of these sessions, people want the opportunity for networking. And networking is much easier, in my opinion, in person than it is via Zoom. So we encourage you to make note and at our next event. And if you subscribe to our newsletter called Metro Briefs, it'll be in there too. So you can get that date on your calendar and plan to attend. So it'll be fun. We're having we have many interesting conversations as we plan these, and we encourage you as participants to, one, give us the feedback, but also if you have ideas on various topics you'd like to hear, let us know. Thanks.
Great. So wrapping up just at 11:30, just like as planned. Um, if Christina or Carrie, you feel comfortable, and I might have asked this, I might have jumped the gun and asked this earlier on in the slides, but do you usually negotiate your employment offers? Why or why not? And do you feel more confident speaking about money in general after this session? Feel free to put it in the chat or come off mute.
Um, I it depends on the job, I think. Sometimes
Yeah.
I've typically I don't negotiate too much, but I think I'm a little bit more choosy which jobs I select and apply for as opposed to negotiating salary, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
I
Lots
think
of
that's
factors.
probably a pretty typical approach to job search,
right,
where you have, the goal, of course, is to have as much information prior so that
right.
you know what maybe what to expect when you go in for the interview and then the offer. That's
Yep,
sometimes the most productive way to do it too.
right. But I think you're after seeing all the information you've given today, I think I do feel more confident in going in and negotiating in the future. So
I
thank
love
you.
that. You are welcome. Go get that money, girl.
And
Okay,
Christina had a
Christina.
similar approach. She's beginning her career, but feeling more confident after negotiating. That's good.
Good. I want people to feel empowered. I want people to be paid what they're worth. And like we said on the slide, if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Great.
Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your attendance live and also in the recordings, reviewing them. And as Anne said, we do this to be helpful and for you. And it would have been something that would have been helpful for her back in the day to have a series like this. So if you have any questions, you have feedbacks, you have suggestions on what would make this even more valuable and helpful, things that you want to see that you haven't, even though we just, when we just gave you a glimpse into the future, please send any of that, any insight to hr@metronet.lib.mn.us. And I hope you have a really, really wonderful day. Thanks, everyone.